Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. How are we getting on? Welcome back to our little Metro build. Apologies for the wait on this one. We had a bit of a combination of technical difficulties with the mods and general lack of creativity and tiredness going on lately, so that's held things up a bit. But we're here now. So, you can see this area of track I've cleared there that I'm going to work on. Unfortunately, with the scrapping mod's complications, I can't actually build with it switched on at the moment, so we'll have to come up with a bit of a workaround. So, first things first, we're going to measure the space we've got to work with. I'm going to start off from the edge of this gap here, bit of damaged platform. We'll just use a few floor pieces to get an idea of how it actually looks. There we go, we've got 6 small floor pieces there that seem to be about the right size. Hindsight, I could actually probably squeeze a little bit more in there, but that will do for now. Obviously this is quite a narrow confined space and I want a street down the middle of it, so I need to quickly measure how far we've got to work with here as well. So that's going to be 1 piece wide, so this is going to be a very narrow build. Courtesy of the mod being the way it is, I've decided to build the whole thing on the platform and then just group select it into place, which actually turned out pretty well. So I'm going to stick 6 floor pieces down, mix and match as always. And select a back wall. I go with these plywood panelled walls as they're more in keeping with the Metro style. It's nice and easy. And onto the front walls. So I'm going to have to improvise a bit and build my own doorways here because of the really narrow space we're working with. The actual shack doorways are obviously sort of 2 sections wide, which won't really fit with the design I'm looking at. So, I'm just comparing how the walls that have snapped on look when they're in place with the ones I've positioned so it matches up on both sides. And we'll move these in and try and mix things up a little bit. So instead of having the doors in a uniform position, we'll put a couple of them next to each other and a couple more separated out. Or 1 more separated out, this will end up being 3 shacks. Dead easy with these ones, it's going no problem at all. Very helpful as they don't snap. Wanted to use these ones as well to mix and match a little bit with, but as these do snap, they're a little less cooperative, so I have to be a bit careful. This one wasn't too bad, actually. There we go. One of the drawbacks to using this sort of thing is that you end up with some fairly significant gaps, but given that it's supposed to be looking very ramshackle and very improvised as well, it's not actually too much of a problem. A lot of the sort of half walls we're using have got gaps in them anyway, so. This one, however, doesn't want to play ball at all, so group select it is. I'll nudge that into place. It's a bit deceptive, this one. The cross beams, there's more of them than it looks like. Well, more than I ever remember anyway. So I had to move that up a lot further than I thought it did. There we go. One thing to bear in mind is that top corner can get a little bit awkward because it's that much higher. It's just something to think about if you're using that particular piece. So we need to get a roof on now. These roof pieces are the same size as the floor ones we've used are from custom vanilla assets. And are significantly easier to use as they're flat than the ones on an angle. We'll just line them up, get a matching roof to the floor. Just use the wooden supports underneath there rather than the metal top. It's much easier to see what you're doing. It's actually a lot easier than it usually is because I have a flat surface to work with as well. I could just line everything up quite easily, didn't have to mess around too much. A little bit of texture flickering, but they also push right into each other like that if you happen to need that. In this case we don't. So, obviously the concrete pillar is standard wall height, so we'll need 2 of them to get the roof high enough to put it on top. So, there we go, there's the second one. Wonderful. So, first technical difficulty, can't see what I'm doing here, so I'll grab a ladder, stick that down so I can, and start encountering difficulty number 2. Namely, you see the meat bag that's unfinished on the floor there, and that plywood board as well. Those got rather in the way when I was trying to sink the pillar in. You can see just here it's not going to let me do it, so I'll have to move the whole structure along a little bit, so... or rather I did when I was building the walls. And for this bit I simply went round the side, so there we go. And if you've got everything lined up, make sure that wooden edge that we can see here is in the right place. You can see it works just fine. A little bit of taking your time and careful preparation saves you from having to take the whole roof off and start again, which is definitely a bonus. That went quite well. And next up we'll put some internal walls in. I'm just going to use group select to get these in rather than the actual rug glitch. As the rug glitch isn't actually necessary, it means the rugs aren't sat there and still in the way when I come to decorate later on. Carefully position that and line it up with the floor. And there we go. And I'll grab the next one. Slight error here in that I've used two of the same pieces right next to each other, so it kind of... it doesn't look as good as it might, so I'll switch these around a little bit, but I can do that off camera. You've got the general idea. So, as we've got a very narrow space, I wanted to use sliding doors for the most part, but the selection isn't as big as I'd like. So for that reason I have actually used a couple of the normal swing type doors, but it kind of adds to the claustrophobic feeling of the place, which is what I'm ultimately going to be going for. It's something I'll be doing in one of the subsequent videos, is to try and make the place feel a lot more claustrophobic and enclosed. For now, simple bit of group select. Much easier to do this from the outside than the inside. You actually see where the things line up, the doors rather. So there we go, got those all in. And now we've got some gaps to plug up. So we're going to use these wire fence posts. We're using the normal height ones rather than the double ones. Just because double ones are too tall, to be in short. It does mean group selecting quite a few of them together, so it's just kind of time consuming, but it works. And the pattern and look of them fits in better with the wooden walls we've got in place already as well. So I could have used barn supports from the miscellaneous tab on the barn tab, I suppose that's the word I'm looking for. But they don't match up in their design with everything else, so I didn't like the look of it, so we're doing this the long fiddly way. One thing to note that I've apparently not managed to record myself doing is the top of the door frame, the horizontal part. I've used some 90-degree angled planks from custom vanilla assets. I've just group select two of them together and then group select them into place over the top of the door to create that horizontal piece. There are planks in USO, but they're flat ones rather than 90-degree angled ones, so you do need those ones out of custom vanilla assets to do that. But there we have the overall effect. So, that's the structure complete. Now I've got the fun task of trying to move it into place without being able to really see what we're doing, which is always interesting. So I'm trying here to line it up with the edge of the platform and also use the rails as a guide as well. Obviously that's very, very wonky, so tweak that. To be fair, this didn't actually take too long, it went quite well. Other thing to bear in mind, of course, with all these pipes here, is to make sure they're not clipping too much through floors and walls and that sort of thing. So we'll adjust that into position. Looks okay. Unfortunately we can't see all the way along the rail, which is slightly annoying. Have a look around the other side, can't see anything. Sticking through the train, but that's not particularly helpful either. So we'll have a look inside. There we go. I'll just lift the floor out and you can see it looks reasonable, but we've got a bit of an angle on there, so need a little bit more tweaking. Adjust it once more. Pull it out a little bit and straighten it up. Up inside and have a quick look again. There we go, much better. So I'm just going to do one final check here. I'm using one of the floor pieces just to get an idea of how it looks. Just sort of eyeballing it to see if it looks like they're the same distance from the outside rails there. Which it looks good, so Now I'm going to take the time to turn the mod back on. As you can see, spot on. Neat. Not much room in there. So, up next, we're going to basically repeat that whole procedure and build another set of shacks and put them in on the other side. So it's exactly the same process again. We're not going to bother going through it all again. However, I'm going to do one thing differently. So we'll take the back walls off here. I'm going to use this little ledge that we're currently stood on as part of the inside of the buildings. So I'm just measuring off the roof pieces there, check they'll do the job to plug the gap up there and actually serve as a roof, and they will. So, get another line of them as before. Grab them with a concrete pillar, up on the stairs, and group select into place. One thing to bear in mind if you're building in this sort of place is you see the sort of vent or drain or whatever it is just next to the yellow bit on the ground. For some reason, the pillar doesn't like to sink through that. I'm not quite sure what it is. Either side of it's fine, or a little bit of overlap, but it won't go through if it's in the middle, so just something to bear in mind when you're trying to do this sort of thing. So now we need to close up the gaps here and divide off the buildings again, or the individual shacks rather. Because we're starting to have a bit of problems with that pillar again. Well, we manage. Fortunately it sticks up a bit at the back there, which I wasn't overjoyed about. Working in the confined space as well that we have makes this a little bit more difficult, because I can't get through the doors until I turn the mod back on. The scrapping mod, that'd be. So I've had to be a little creative with how I get these internal walls in. I've gone inside the end shack here, and the next two I'll just do from the far end. There we go. So the next one. Fortunately, these half walls are very, very soft, as we mentioned before, so they are very cooperative about glitching into each other. If only the floor was as cooperative. There we go. Slide that into place. Not the most private of dwellings, but if you're living underground in a post-nuclear scenario, you take what you can get, I should imagine. So we'll carefully get that one in there. This was a little bit more temperamental, but decided to play ball in the end, so there we go. So that's basically the build. We'll have a look at the decorated finished product. There's actually a few more bits and pieces to do. I want to do some more building on the platform. I want to, as I say, make it feel a lot more enclosed, so I will probably put some tall junk walls in to sort of close the area off. I had thought about putting stuff on top of these, but you wouldn't want anybody walking around on the roofs because it'd just be noisy as heck for anybody living in there. Got a few stairs there to allow access around the place. And unfortunately, I can't build anything directly on the top, and trying to use an invisible rug to form an invisible base to build on was not cooperative at all. Got some sleeping bags down there. That's a makeshift furniture pack chair on there. There's a child-sized mattress in there, but again, they'll have to make do with what they can get. Because of confined space, it was a little bit awkward. I also had to put all this stuff in, obviously, with the mod still switched off, so it made positioning things very difficult. These are very, very bare-bones shacks. There's actually one of these that is not decorated at all, because, or furnished at all, I should say. Simply because with the mod on, I couldn't get to it, so we'll skip over that one as it's an empty box, but it's the last one. And we'll take a quick swing around and have a look at the overall effect again. I am planning on working on converting the remaining train cars into some form of sleeping quarters as well. Not quite sure how I'm going to approach that yet. I'll put a few more stores on the platform and close things up a little bit as well. For now, there we have the build. They're fairly simple and basic, but a little bit of an exercise in creative problem solving. I do hope you enjoyed. You can see what I've got to work with there as well. For those of you interested, I will be streaming again tomorrow night. I do hope you'll stop by for that one. If you've hit that little notification icon next to your subscribe button. It'll let you know when I go live. For now, thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed, I'm sure you know what to do by now. Social media links down below as always, and I will speak to you very, very soon.